All Things Geekery, the podcast where we explore the realms of geeky hobbies like gaming, tech, science fiction, and all that randomness in between. I'm your host, Darkaero, and I'm joined tonight by a very special guest, my lovely bride.
Hey, I am Skater Girl from Skater Girl Designs, and it's time for a little geeky chat.
Hey guys, we're back with episode 3, and tonight we're talking about MTV's hit television series, Scream. But I have to say, there's going to be spoilers, so if you haven't watched the show, you might want to stop listening now. But if you're interested, keep listening, because we're going to review it. We're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we're looking forward to in Season 2, which airs in 4 days. And I'm super excited. So get ready, because here we go. So, babe, what kind of geeky stuff have you been doing this week?
Well, this week I have been geeking out over the new Alice movie that is coming out. So I have been drawing the Cheshire Cat and the Mad Hatter.
You're going to go watch it without me?
Yes, I am.
With the
girls?
Watch
it without me.
With the girls?
Yep. And so I decided to take my Cheshire Cat drawing and apply it to a longboard. And so that has been what I have been doing this week. Again, super excited about the movie, so I've been a little obsessed with that.
And who did an awesome clear coat job on your board for you?
You did.
Me. I get husband points for that one.
Husband points, yes.
Actually, I get geeky points for that one.
Yes.
I honestly haven't been doing a whole lot of geeky things. I jumped into Destiny a couple of nights ago, but honestly, I'm at a place that I'm just kind of getting burnt out with it a little bit. So I haven't been gaming a whole lot. You know, I sit down with the guys once in a while. But honestly, what's been kind of exciting is this is going on my 3rd year for the blog, and the Newbie Blogger Initiative, kind of how I got started with mine, is back up and going for the month of June. So we've kind of gathered the troops in the blogosphere with some of the Twitter peeps, and we've kind of got everything back up and going. And we're using a new app called Discord to chat and then talk about some of the writing prompts and events that we're going to be doing. So I'm kind of anxious to see some of the bloggers that are out there, some of the new writers. This is my 3rd year of doing it, so that's kind of what I've been doing. But enough with the geeky chatter. Let's talk about the show.
All right.
So like I said, it's going to be a spoiler alert big time, because we're actually reviewing kind of the pilot to episode 10 for season 1. A high-level overview of everything that we liked, disliked, what we're excited about, favorite characters. So if you haven't watched the show, I highly recommend it to anybody that hasn't seen it. But if you haven't watched it, stop listening unless you want to know who done it.
Yes.
So season 1, the pilot. What was your thought? What did you think about the pilot? What was your...
Well, I really liked it. I was actually really surprised. I really wasn't expecting much. I thought the Scream movies were okay. I think I like them more now than I did when they first came out when I was younger. But the TV show I was really surprised about. The characters, the depth of characters for each of them was really well written. And I have to say my favorite character would probably be Noah's character, which he is kind of the, geek out of all of them that keeps up with all of the serial killer stuff and all of that. And I also really like the way they did the mask in the TV series, because it's super creepy.
Yeah, so, you mentioned Noah, kind of the parallel that you see between the Scream movies and the Scream TV show is that the characters they did for the TV show, it's very similar to the characters that you see in the movies. So Noah being the very socially awkward, super smart, geeky,
right,
kind of paranoid freak about all the slasher serial killers. So he's a Randy. So Noah plays a very good part between that. And then you also mentioned the mask. So the mask is your typical ghost face, just like the Scream movies were. But they've
It's very different. It's very dark. It's almost...
Yeah, I wouldn't say they've dumbed it down, but
no,
it's very deformed looking too, and that has to go with the backstory of what they're trying to bring to you. But like you said, it's darker. So I think I think it's darker to me because it's new. You know, we're talking 1996 is when Scream was originally released. This is 20 years ago. So when Ghostface first came out, it was, ooh and ah, look at this thing. And Wes Craven did a very good job at bringing slasher horror film to a mixed genre. And he played the books very well because nobody really knew what was going to happen. And he took the whodunit mystery feel and input it into a horror slasher film. And nobody had ever done that before. And I think the show did a very good job of taking the whodunit feature and adding it to a television show.
Yes, I agree.
You know, if you look back at the pilot, so we kind of stumbled upon the show. I had heard MTV was doing something similar to this, but I didn't realize that they were doing a Scream show. And honestly, you don't see too many slasher flicks turned into a television show. And honestly, if there's a kind of a TV adaptation of a movie, it's lame.
Really horrible.
It's horrible and lame and just awful, and will take life away from you if you watch it. This one, I wouldn't call lame by any means. I thought they did a fantastic job with the recruiting of actors. I think the script was well written. I think it was smartly done because, of course, the title says Scream. So what are people instantly thinking if they've gone back and watched the movies? Or if you're an oldie and goodie like we are, we saw the movies when it first came out to theater. And you know, we kind of already have that preset notion. This is what it's going to be. This is who the killer's going to do. And they didn't do that. So the show itself takes place in a completely different town. Yeah, Scream, the movie, took place in Woodsboro. And It was based on high school students. And the show does the same thing. It is based around this fictitious town, and it's a group of high school students. But I like the parallel that they did in the pilot. You know, you have this opening scene with Scream the movie with Drew Barrymore locked in her gigantic house, and you get this creepy caller that chases her down and ends up, you know, chasing her out of her house and stabbing her and ultimately killing her. And what do they have in the show? They have this humongous house, and there's this teenage girl stuck in her house, and she ends up getting not a phone call because, again, we're 20 years later, so people never talk on their phones. They text.
Exactly.
They all they ever do is text. So they don't get a creepy voice of really who this guy is. She answers the phone, and you know, somebody's got this creepy looking voice and creepy sounding voice. And, you know, she's like, hey, you know, whoever this is this my boyfriend? But then they start texting together. So it's kind of neat. It was funny, the parallel. 20 years later, you know, we've got the smartphones and texting.
Right.
My favorite part about that whole scene was it was very reminiscent to the movie. You get the girl stuck in her house. You get the show was almost kind of filmed in the same sense that you know, she was trying to crawl away from this killer as he was stabbing her, just like the movie was. You ended up having a boyfriend in the movie who was basically gutted, and in this movie, this boyfriend ended up getting beheaded. So there's some funny parallels. The funniest thing to me was she was trying to not dial 911 on her phone. She was trying to use Siri, and she was like, Siri, dial 911. And it was like, okay, dialing Pottery Barn.
Right.
I died.
That was hilarious.
Because how many times have we tried to use Siri and you're like, hey, I need directions to such and such. And it's like, okay, I'm dialing da-da-da.
Some completely different random thing that didn't even sound exactly like what you said.
So, you know, I think, like I said, I think the overall feel and kind of adaptation they did to the show, I don't want to say I liked it better than the movies, because again, it's different. It's not the same. It's just different. It has a completely different feel to it, even though it's the same.
Right.
All right. So, like we said, between the parallels in the movie versus the show, the movie took place in Woodsboro, which ultimately became a famous book, and you had Gale Weathers, who was the famous reporter who kind of exploited everything, made tons of money, wrote a couple of books on it, and then ultimately through the whole franchise in Scream 4, we get revisited by Sydney, who is on a book tour, and she decides to come back to Woodsboro because of her book that she's written. So in the show, we're back at a town called Lakewood. So again, Woodsboro, Lakewood, kind of a parallel, but not the same, but different. And if you start looking at the actors and the persona of these actors that played the people, they were very similar to the people that were in the movie. Like, for instance, Emma Duvall. She was the recently popular high school student. And I say recently because it seems like she was kind of the very smart girl, a little nerdy, probably outside of the clique at one time. But, she became this kind of preppy, pretty girl that got in with kind of the snobby group. And she sort of plays the same role and leading character as what Sydney did in the movies.
Right. I find her character way less annoying, though. I think that the Sydney's character in the movies was slightly annoying, and that may just be my own opinion, obviously, but I thought that her character in the show was really well played. She didn't want you to feel sorry for her. It just seemed like a really well thought out character. She had a lot more depth than Sydney seemed to have.
Yeah, and again, you're taking comparison from a movie to a TV series. So, what's the one kind of common thing that always happens inside of a horror slasher film? You have nasty murderer always chasing down the teenagers that are sleeping and drinking and boozing and doing drugs, and oh my God, there's a creeper, he's going to kill me, and they run and then they die. Okay, movie's over. In a TV show, it wouldn't last very long if that's all they did, though. So I think the parallel of taking the character depth, they really had to. I think they had to sidestep a little bit and go, okay, if we want this to span over multiple seasons, how do we reveal a character at a much slower rate than what a typical slasher film does? Because all a slasher film does is say, murderer, I got to go kill people. Here's the cast. Okay, who's going to die? And it's set up for an hour and a half. But Scream movies did it very well because they added such a dynamic whodunit, and it was always a mystery because basically every person in the film was a suspect of being a killer at one point in time. And there was always this kind of mind game going on. And same with the show. Very opening scene, all this crazy stuff starts happening. And the funny thing is, all of this started kind of taking place and happening because of a cyberbullying incident about a video that was shot, and it went viral over YouTube about a couple of teenagers that were in the school that everybody went to, and it got released. So that's kind of where everything started, and then you started seeing tension between friendships, and then you really started seeing kind of what the killer was doing in the background. So you said your favorite character was Noah. Why Noah? Out of all the actors and out of all the people that were there, why Noah?
Well, I just think he's quirky and he's funny, and he's kind of that geeky cool, which geek. But I just really liked his character. He's smart. He has a good heart. He's always thinking about, every single angle that it could possibly be, even if it's him as the suspect. And I don't know, he just added a lot of depth to the show. And he added some humor as well.
Yeah, I think that was one of the cool parts is he's got a comedic side to him. And Noah was one of my favorites. There's a couple of other people in there that I think had. Emma was a favorite of mine as well. I think she played a very good lead role. So the three people that really stood out to me was Emma. She was a good lead role. I think she had a good mix of playing a victim and learning how to stand up for herself and fight this thing.
Right.
Noah is that quirky friend that she's got that they've got a very dynamic relationship together as a friend. They don't love one another. They hang out together. He's a super geeky nerd. I mean, I'm talking way out there geeky. But he's super smart. So is she. And then there is this stranger that comes into the mix. His name is Kieran. So he's the new student to the school. And, the new student to the school ends up being a suspect because he's got that mysterious figure going on. He was one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, I did like his character too.
The rest of the cast, it was good, but we get introduced from, you look at pilot season 1 all the way up into the very last episode, the cast gets introduced to us very quickly. So you get this cyberbullying incident that happens. You get a little bit of a flashback into the backstory of this killer. His name's Brandon.
Brandon James, was it?
Yeah, Brandon James. So you get this 20 years ago, Brandon James was kind of this disfigured elephant man. We'll just call him that because he was what everybody considered as the freak, and he was an outcast. But Emma's mom, she was the next door neighbor to this so-called kind of disfigured kid, and this disfigured kid ended up having a kind of love obsession over her mom. So the backstory gets pretty tricky through the entire season of the first season anyways. So you get this whole unfolding of the backstory of what happened with Brandon James, his mom. You've got Emma's dad, who's still in the mix as well. He ended up leaving years ago and just up and walked out on the family. You've got Emma, who used to be a geeky nerd, and now she's kind of moved over into that cliquey, popular girl category. And she's got this whole new set of friends. Another parallel that came across was Brooke. Brooke is kind of the ringleader of the popular girls. And if you go back to the movies, you had Sydney's popular friend who, of course, ended up dying. So there are some pretty cool parallels that they've pulled out. I thought this was pretty interesting too. So Wes Craven actually he's got a little spot as a executive producer on the show, but when this thing aired, he had already passed away.
Interesting.
So I think it was kind of a cool homage back to the original creator and writer and director of the Scream movies. I think that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, favorite character for me, yeah, Noah was probably my second favorite. I would have to say my favorite was the mystery student that came in, being Kieran. I think he's got a lot to offer to the show still, coming up in the next season. So, who was your least favorite character out of this bunch?
I would probably have to say Brooke. And I think Brooke is my least favorite because I didn't especially love her acting, but I liked the show well enough that I didn't really care. And so even though I didn't really think that she was the best actress, she still played a good role. And the show itself was good enough that I kind of overlooked that. But she would be probably my least favorite character. But then again, the show wouldn't be the same without her. So it's kind of hard to say what my least favorite character is besides just the acting point, because all of these characters played such a key role in the show.
Yeah, I think if she was missing from the show, there would be something. There would be a massive gap in the story in the show. Because yes, she was annoying, and I hated the kind of the two-faced. I can't stand the two-faced side that she's got, but she brought a very interesting dynamic to the friendship. So there is a genuine friendship that she has for Emma, and I think it's very tight. But then there's also the part of her who is the ritzy rich, I want to uphold my reputation more than anything girl, and that's annoying to me. My least favorite character out of everybody was Jake. I couldn't stand Jake. He is your typical frat boy, uppity, arrogant, and I didn't like his interaction with everybody because he was very. I say I don't like his interaction. He's another character that had a massive role of keeping that mystery going with everybody, because him and another one of the actors. His name was Will. So Will is actually Emma's boyfriend in the show. But here's the strange thing. So Will and Jake, being best friends, actually stumbled upon something about Brooke's father. So Brooke is the popular girl who's also kind of the two-faced, would rather take care of her reputation. She's a rich girl because her dad is actually the mayor of the town. Anyways, Jake and Will ended up stumbling upon this video that was very incriminating about her dad, and they plotted to blackmail him. That brought a very interesting dynamic to the show as well. And Jake is very manipulative. Will had his lacking parts as well, but Jake, I think, was kind of the pot stirrer in that whole scheme.
Yes, Will had a moral compass. I don't think that Jake did.
Even after everything in season 1 that happened to Jake, after he got stabbed, after everything, I still don't think Jake is quite right in the head. He's got something loose. And this is a spoiler alert because Will is no longer in the season. He ended up basically having his head split in two by a ditch digger.
Yeah, his whole body split in two. Yeah.
So when we say slasher flick, we mean slasher flick. They did a good job from a TV standpoint of making this a gory film look. There was a part in the very first portion of the show where they ended up tossing a decapitated head into a pool. And a lot of times they'll just cop out and go CG. I'm not a huge CG fan because, again, it just doesn't look good. I came from the old school movies where everything was done by hand. You got to see, the makeup effects, and I always enjoyed that part of the movies. I always enjoyed people that took the talent to be able to paint makeup on and do effects with blood and scars, and they ended up doing a prosthetic head. It didn't look great, but it didn't look bad either. But I gave them props for using a prosthetic and actually doing makeup on this head. And there are some things that they did with the show from a CG standpoint, Will being one of them. In his death scene, it was definitely CG. There was no other way that they probably could have done that and made it look as good as they did with it being a TV show. I just don't think they had the budget for it. So the other thing that really annoyed me about Jake was his, like you said, his moral compass wasn't there, but he just kind of had this lackadaisical feel to him as well. Ooh, there's a killer. It was almost like it wasn't a big deal to him that his closest friends were dying off one by one. There was a part in the show where somebody had written something on the side of his truck, and he got more mad at somebody writing something on the side of his truck than a friend of his that he's known for, his entire school, basically, ever since he was little, because these people have grown up together. So yeah, he was definitely my least favorite. So overall, I think from a show to a movie standpoint, how do you feel they compare to one another?
Well, we've talked about, you don't really want to say one is better than the other, but I honestly have enjoyed the TV show more. The only character that I really missed from the movie that they didn't really include in the TV show would be Dewey, because he was hilarious.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but I think Dewey's comedy kind of came into Noah.
Right.
But then don't forget you had the sheriff that was there as well. That was the love interest of Emma's mom.
Right.
So there was a sheriff, but he just wasn't the funny Dewey, and I missed that.
Yeah. But like you said, Noah was that, and it kind of cheesed up the movie a little bit, and this was anything but cheesy. I was watching the show, but I wouldn't watch it without you, because it was just, there were spots where I was jumping and it was super creepy. Intense. And the mask to me is just so creepy. It's really increased the creep factor. So like I said, from movie to show, I like the depth of characters more. The creepiness of the mask, and then the fact that you really do not know, who it is until the end. The title says you'll never see it coming, and me, you always get annoyed because I end up figuring out who the person is within 5 minutes, and I did not do that with this show. I kept thinking, oh well, maybe it's Jake. Oh no, well maybe it's this person, and then towards the end I was like, that one person, I'm thinking there's something wrong with them. And it was pretty much both of us at the same time on the same person. And so, but it took a long time, because it's each episode, they keep you guessing. Every episode, it seemed oh, well, maybe it's that person. Oh, well, maybe it's that person. Because they'd add some creep factor to each person in each episode that would just kind of keep you guessing.
Yeah, they did great on the whole guessing factor. And guys, she's not lying about she'll watch a film and I don't know, there's this little box in her head. It starts deducting things and it goes ding. It's like the little poppers that you get on a turkey when they're cooked well enough. It's like this little thing goes pop. And when she's got the answer, she just blurts it out. So we're in the middle of a movie where I'm eating popcorn, drinking a Coke, and she's like, hey, this is who did it. I'm like, really? And of course, we'll fast forward through the movie because the rest of the movie's ruined now, right? And of course, she's right. So, yeah, good job. Like we said earlier, there are going to be some spoilers in this. And I think the biggest spoiler for season 1 was, like we said, they did a good job of not revealing who the killer was up front. And they did a good job of keeping it mysterious. But the killer ended up being part of the original backstory with Brandon James. Mm-hmm. So if you go back to Emma, who's the main character of the show, her mom, which was played by Tracy Middendorf, and her name was Margaret, or Maggie as they called her. Her name was Maggie Duval, and if you look at some of the other characters that kind of came in a little bit later, one of them was Piper, and Piper was a podcaster. She was also a kind of an investigative journalist, so she ends up showing up mysteriously. They called her Piper Shaw, and I don't really know what her real last name was or if Piper was her real name, but towards the end of episode 10, it was about episode 8 when me and the wife were like, hey, this is kind of mysterious. This one person, which was Piper, she kept showing up in just these convenient places. Uh-huh. And finally, towards the end of the show, the biggest spoiler is this, that Emma and Piper are related because their mama is the same.
Boom.
So Maggie ended up having a relationship with this Brandon James 20 years ago when she was 16 or 15, however old she was, and they ended up having a baby together. And that baby, her parents ended up putting it up for adoption. So she never got to see the kid. She never got to know its name. If
it was a closed adoption.
It was a closed adoption. So she didn't even really know about it. She knew about it, but didn't know about it. So that was the whole big mysterious thing that happened for season 1. And that's really what Emma was coming about, because the killer kept leaving breadcrumbs for her to find and track. And she kept saying, well, you're smart enough, you'll figure it out. And finally it ended up with her down at the docks. And it ended up in a big battle between Emma, the killer, which was Piper, who's Ghostface, and her mom was there as well. The interesting part for the ending of season 1, one of the other people that were in the show was Audrey. Audrey was the victim of this cyberbullying event that took place, and Audrey just magically knew where these people were at the end of the show, and she showed up with a gun and shot the bad guy. Lots of strange things going on at the very end of season 1. What the heck are they going to do in season 2? Because they know who the killer is. Mm-hmm. Well, they do know who the killer is, but season 1 ended with Audrey, a year ago, before all this took place, ended up breaking into the police station and grabbing personal documents for the Brandon James murder cases. And she stole the ghost face mask. And she's been in cahoots with Piper, which is the killer. But here's my thing. I don't think she's in cahoots. I think Piper found out some way to blackmail Audrey. And I think that's why she had to break into the police station a year ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that, but I was wondering the same thing through entire season is this has to end at this season. How in the world are they going to get like a whole new cast of characters and do this all over? But that ending was really a plot twist with Audrey. So I'll be curious to see where they take that in the next season, because it's a very interesting plot twist, as you see her burning all of the things that would lead her back, lead anyone to her being that person, and what happens to the mask, does Audrey have it? Where are they going to go from there?
Yep. I'm curious to see what they do with it, guys. So we're also curious to see what you guys think about season 1 and any upcoming thoughts about season 2, if you're excited for it. We'd love to hear from you, so give us a comment. And guys, we are just about out of time, so we're going to have to wrap it up. And on that note, you guys can follow my lovely bride out on Instagram, and she is at Skater Girl Designs, and that's SKATERDESIGNZ. And you can also find her out on Twitter with the same handle. That's at Skater Girl Designs. So these will all be in the show notes. You can also find me at IOGirlMarybelly out on Twitter. You can find me out on my blog as well. I write pretty much weekly at ahobbitsjourney.com. So we want to thank you guys for being with us this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the plot twists and a little bit of explanation of what happened with Scream. We hope you guys go check the show out. Please leave us a comment. Email us at podcastatg@gmail.com with any feedback or anything you guys want to talk about, or maybe some upcoming episodes you'd would like to see. And we will see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Bye.
Bye. See you guys. All right. Would you like me to introduce the podcast, or would you like to introduce the podcast?
I would like you to introduce the podcast. What?
Shh. Sugar, sugar, badada. What you put you, badada.
Shaka Jamaica. Episode of season. Episode of season. It's an episode of season.
It's an episode of season. Sizzly season.
Feel your ratings going down.